Hi 7th graders, I hope you have been doing well. Today we are going to go through the Unit 1 review. If you have not done it yet, do not watch this video until you have done it. This video is going to give you all the answers on how to solve the problems before the test, so please make sure that you do not watch this video until you have tried it on your own. If you have a couple questions over something, then definitely you can watch the video, but please make sure you're not just copying it because that's not going to help you for the test. Alright, so let's start right away. If you notice on the side, there's the two IXLs, and then there's I can identify integers using a number line, and you have to write I got it, almost, or help. This is just a way for you to check how you're doing. Okay? The IXLs, that's what's going in the grade book, so make sure all of these IXLs on the side here that you have done, because they will go in the grade book, and it's important that you have them done, at least up to 70%. Alright, so let's get started. Which of the following numbers are examples of integers? Circle the integers. Okay, so remember, an integer is a positive and a negative whole number. So, square root of 11, that gives me a decimal. That doesn't work. This one is a decimal. That doesn't work. 5 is a whole number. That works. 0.6 is a decimal. That doesn't work. 3/4 is a fraction. That doesn't work. Pi simplifies to 3.14, which does not work. But -4 is an integer because it's a whole number. It's just negative. So I only have two integers there. Alright, number 2, we need to place these integers on the number line and then order them from least to greatest. Alright, so I have a -2, a 3, a -4, and a 5. Now when I put them in order from least to greatest, I always start on the left and go to the right. So I have -4, -2, 3, and 5. Looking at number 3, same thing. I have a 2, a -3, a 4, and a -5. So now I always start at the left and move to the right. My smallest number is -5, and then -3, and then 2, and lastly 4. Alright, so that was lesson 1, all about integers. If you have any questions about that, please let me know. Moving on to lesson 2. Number 4 is asking us to explain the difference between the opposite of a number and absolute value. Alright, here goes. Absolute value is always, always, always positive. Okay, but the opposite of a number can be positive or negative. For example, if I say that what is the opposite of -5, you would tell me it's 5. Right? What is the opposite of 7? You would tell me the opposite is -7. So the opposite can be positive or negative, whereas absolute value is always positive. Alright, so now we need to use absolute value to simplify each numerical expression. So absolute value is always positive, so the absolute value of -5 gives me 5. Number 6, the absolute value of 6 is simply 6. Alright, when I look at number 7, the absolute value of 5 plus the absolute value of 6. So I can't do any adding until I figure out what the absolute values of those numbers are. So I have 5 plus 6, which gives me a sum of 11. Alright, number 8, I have to do -5 plus 6 first because it's in the absolute value symbols. So -5 plus 6 gives me a 1 in absolute value. 1 absolute value is 1. Alright, so that's lesson 2. Let's move on to lesson 3. Now we're adding these integers. Alright, so number 9. 5 plus -3. We are going to use the number line to find the sum. So when you use the number line, you can use it one of two ways. You can start at 0 and move to the first number, or you could start at that first number. I'll start at 0 for this one, and then the next one I'll start at the first number. So my first number is 5, which tells me I'm moving positive, which is to the right. And then my second number is a -3, and negative tells me I'm moving to the left. So I'm going 1, 2, 3 places over. So my new answer is 2. Alright, looking at number 10. This time I'm going to start on my first number, which is -6. My second number is -6 plus -2. -2 is telling me I'm moving to the left. So I'm going to go 2 more places over. So my answer is now -8. Alright, now if you don't like using the number line, another way you could do it is to use 0 pairs to find your sum. Okay? So to do that, I start with my first number, a -4. So that means I'm going to draw 4 negative signs. And then my second number is +7, which tells me I'm going to draw 7 positive signs. 4, 5, 6, 7. Now for the fun part, I'm going to cancel out a positive with a negative. So I'm left with 3 positive as my answer. Alright, moving on to number 12. -1 plus -8. So I start with my first one, that's a negative sign. Now my second number is a -8, so that means I'm going to also do 8 negatives. 6, 7, 8. But they're both negative, so none of them cancel out, so my answer is -9. Alright, we're moving right on. That was lesson 3. Now we're on to lesson 4. So we need to subtract the integers by adding the opposite. So remember, when we add the opposite, that's where we do keep, change, change. Alright, so we're going to keep the 4. We're going to change the minus sign to a plus sign and change this +9 to a -9. Alright, and now you can choose to either use a number line, use 0 pairs, or use those tricks that we learned in the last lesson. Okay, so my signs are different, which tells me I am going to subtract my numbers. 9 minus 4 gives me 5. But my biggest number right here is a 9, and that 9 is negative. So my answer is -5. Alright, let's go to 15. I'm subtracting -2 minus 8. So I'm going to, again, use keep, change, change. I'm going to keep the -2, change the minus to a plus, change the 8 to a -8. Alright, but now my signs are the same, so I just add my numbers. 2 plus 8 is a 10, but both my numbers are negative, so my answer is a -10. Alright, let's go to number 14. Taking -7 minus a -11. So I'm subtracting, so again I'm going to keep, change, change. -7 plus 11. I'm going to use those tricks again that we talked about in the graphic organizer. I have a negative and a positive, so I subtract my numbers. 11 minus 7 is 4. My biggest number is 11, which is positive, so my answer is also 4. Alright, and our last one of these, 6 minus a -3. I'm going to keep, change, change. I keep my 6, change my minus to a plus, change my -3 to a +3. Oh, that makes this problem a lot easier. 6 plus 3 is 9. And we are done with lesson 4. Alright. Lesson 5 is saying to complete the diagram of the rules for multiplying and dividing integers. So if I am multiplying two like signs, so positive times a positive, my answer is a positive. A negative times a negative, my answer is also a positive. But over here on this side, a negative times a positive is a negative, and a positive times a negative is a negative. Okay, so if you remember those 4 rules, you'll be able to multiply and divide like a pro. Okay, so 3 times 9 gives me 27, taking a negative times a negative, which gives me a positive for an answer. So my answer is just 27. Number 20, I'm taking 48 divided by 6, which is 8, but I have a positive divided by a negative, which gives me a negative for an answer, so my answer is negative 8. Alright, number 19. 6 times negative 4. I know 6 times 4 is 24. I'm taking a positive times a negative, which gives me a negative for an answer. Alright, and lastly, negative 35 divided by negative 5. 35 divided by 5 gives me 7. And a negative divided by a negative gives me a positive for an answer, so my answer is just 7. Alright, we're almost done, folks. We're on the last page. Alright, so the next lesson is all about powers and exponents. We are going to evaluate the power by writing it in expanded form, and then simplify it by writing it in standard form. Okay, so expanded form, let's look at 22. That's saying I am doing negative 5 times negative 5. So that's my expanded form, okay, because this is squared, so that means I'm doing it twice. Alright, so negative 5 times negative 5. Now I'm going to solve it. A negative times a negative gives me a positive, and I know 5 times 5 is 25. Alright, number 23, sorry. Now this time I'm still doing it squared, but I have this negative sign out in front. So what that means is I keep my negative, and now I'm doing 5 times 5. Okay, I have a negative times a positive, which tells me my answer is going to be negative, and I know 5 times 5 is 25, so my answer is negative 25. See how those parentheses make a huge difference between this problem and this problem? Very important that you pay attention to that. Alright, number 24. Negative 2 in parentheses cubed. So that tells me I'm taking this times itself by 3. So that's expanded form. That would give you 1 point on the test. Now the second point is we have to solve this. Negative 2 times negative 2 is a positive 4. But I still have a negative 2 here that I need to multiply. Positive times a negative gives me a negative for an answer. So I get a negative 8. Okay, let's look at 25. This time I have a negative sign out in front. So that means I just keep my negative, and I have a 2 times 2 times 2. Okay, so I have a negative 2 times 2. That gives me a negative, oops, not 8, sorry, a negative 4. But I still have to take that times 2. A negative 4 times 2 gives me a negative 8 for an answer. So in this instance, both my answers were the same and the parentheses didn't matter. The only time it matters is when our exponent is even. Alright, let's look at the last couple. 8 to the 0 power. If you remember, anything to the 0 power is simply 1. Alright. Now, if we look at 27, I have 0 to the 8th power. That is like taking 0 times 0 times 0 times 0 times 0. That's 5, 6, 7, 8. Anything times 0 is simply 0. So that was an easy one. Alright, let's move on to our last lesson. Complete the diagram for the order of operations. So remember, order of operations is GEMDAS. I hope this is a very quick thing for you to fill out. But our first step is always our grouping symbols. Our second step is our exponents. Our third step is from left to right. We multiply and divide. And then lastly, our last step is from left to right again. We add or subtract. Alright, so we have 3 more problems and then we're done. We need to simplify this. So again, I like to write GEMDAS out here. My first step is grouping symbols. I see I have parentheses, so we're going to do that first. I always rewrite everything that I didn't use. So now I have 7 minus 5, which gives me 2. Alright, so that's done. My next step is exponents. I see I have 3 squared. And I know that's like taking 3 times 3. So 3 times 3 is 9. And then I just rewrite everything else. It really helps when you underline the step you're doing so that you don't forget anything when you are carrying it down. Okay, my next step is multiplying and dividing. I see I have 1 divide symbol. 10 divided by 2 gives me 5. Now my last step is adding and subtracting from left to right. So I can't do 9 plus 5 first. I have to do 12 minus 9. 12 minus 9 is 3. And lastly, 3 plus 5 is 8. Alright, let's look at number 30. Again, I'm writing GEMDAS, so I remember what steps these go in. My first step is grouping symbols. So if you notice, these absolute value signs are acting like a grouping symbol in this problem. Okay, inside my grouping symbol, I have 7 minus 4 squared. So that tells me I need to solve my exponent first. Alright, so 7 minus 4 squared is 16. And then I use my absolute value signs as well. Alright, now I'm going to solve inside my absolute value. So I'm going to rewrite what I don't use. 7 minus 16. So again, my signs are different. I have a positive and a negative. So you can take 16 minus 7, which gives you 9. But 16 is bigger, so it's a negative 9 inside my absolute value. Now let's solve for our absolute value. The absolute value of negative 9 gives me a positive 9. So now I'm done with grouping symbols and exponents. I have 1 problem left. It is negative 36 divided by 9. A negative divided by a positive gives me a negative for an answer. Negative 36 divided by 9 is 4. So I have negative 4 for an answer. Alright, our last problem. I'm going to rewrite GEMDAS again so I remember how to solve it. So now this time my grouping symbol is this fraction bar, which tells me I need to solve the top, simplify the top first and then the bottom before I can divide. Alright, so let's start with exponents. I see in the bottom I have an exponent, so I'm going to rewrite the top. 2 squared gives me 4, so I'm done with exponents. Now we need to simplify our top. So I have to multiply and divide first. So 3 times 6 is 18. This is all over 4. Multiplying and dividing is done. Now I'm going to add and subtract my top. So I have 14 minus 18. Again, I have a negative minus a positive. So I can just take 18 minus 14, which gives me 4. and my bigger number is 18, which tells me this is a negative 4. Alright, so now I'm left with negative 4 over 4. Now I can divide this out. I know if I divide a negative divided by a positive, my answer is a negative. 4 divided by 4 is a negative 1. Alright, so 7th graders, I hope you were able to do most of this on your own. This is a great way for you to check your answers, get a little review before the test that is coming up. If you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day.